Why I started to learn mindfulness. It was really that moment in university where I had to essentially perform under pressure, and I found that I crumbled in those moments. It was like the pressure would cause me to make mistakes, and those mistakes would get in my own head, and it was kind of a negative flywheel.
A bunch of you said that you wanted to hear about the mental side of the game, so I wanted to talk about it. First, I'll go over what drove me to learn mindfulness. Second, what even is mindfulness? And third, how is it important to ultimate and also life? Mindfulness was the first method that I used to explore the mental side of the game. And at this point, 5 years after learning it, I can confidently say that it's had a huge impact on my development as a player. And also, unexpectedly, it's had a huge impact on other areas of my life as well. When I initially learned the skill, I had hoped that it would help me deal with the on-field stress that I usually experienced and went through during high-pressure situations. And while it did end up helping me deal with that on-field stress and pressure, one of the unexpected things that happened was it helped me deal and be more intentional with anything that I wanted to do in life, whether that was work or school or friendships, relationships, on-field sport, or my other interests. It was so applicable to all other areas in my life. With all that in mind, the following is a portion of a presentation that I gave at work on the topic of mindfulness. If anything is interesting to y'all or you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. I will respond to each and every single one of them. Enjoy.
Can you see it okay? Okay, awesome. Yeah, so this was the book that started me off on my journey for mindfulness. It was actually, I guess for context, the reason why Michael Jordan and the Space Jam logo is on here is because the author of this book, George Mumford, was the person who the coach of the Chicago Bulls, Phil Jackson, brought in to coach them during the second three-peat. So the team and Michael Jordan has said and credits George Mumford a lot for being able to bring in this mindfulness practice to the team and basically help them center themselves in those extremely pressured moments and perform in those kinds of extremely high pressure situations. So yeah, I broke this down into 3 sections. First is, why did I decide to learn mindfulness? Second, what is mindfulness? And then third is the so what takeaway, why is mindfulness important? And then at the end, the actual practice. Quick backstory. Starting out for me with Ultimate, I started playing back in Vancouver. That is me on one of the junior teams in like grade 9. And for context, I was never really that athletic. My nickname on this team was Chuck because during the first practice, right before, I thought it was a great idea, or I didn't really think about it, but I ate a full dinner right before practice. And then I probably threw up after the first warm-up lap. And that's why my nickname was Chuck, because of Up Chuck. But yeah, after finishing high school, moving for university, I moved out here, went to McMaster, and that was me on the varsity team. So I played all 4 years, captained the last 3. And at the same time, I was finishing my undergrad in math and sciences and then working part-time. The reason why I mention that is just for context for later, or for, a bit later, but recently I just finished my second year playing for the Toronto Rush, the semi-pro ultimate team from Toronto. So there are some pictures that I'm very grateful for and clips. But yeah, that goes back to why I started to learn mindfulness. It was really that moment in university where I was similarly in a position where there were moments where I had to essentially perform under pressure, and I found that I crumbled in those moments. It was like the pressure would cause me to make mistakes, and those mistakes would get in my own head, and it was kind of a negative flywheel. So the main reason that I decided to learn was to be able to try to perform better in those high pressure situations. And the second reason was, in my mind, from the research that I had mentioned, I had awareness that it could help me hopefully improve work ethic at school, my job, and also sport. And luckily, the result was I was able to recenter myself during those stressful moments on the field. But more importantly, and what I think that hopefully ISIT or anybody can take away, is that I learned how to use mindfulness to work more effectively on the things that I cared about. So at the time, that was balancing school, work, and Frisbee. But now it's propelling my career or focusing on the things that are pursuing the things that I am passionate about. But yeah, that goes on to what is mindfulness. So the definition, and I think this is a maybe exaggerated, but I think a very succinct way of putting it, is mindfulness means paying attention in a very particular way, on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally as if your life depended on it. So to break it down even simpler, it is just focusing on the present moment. And kind of preview into the practice that we'll do, that is essentially the whole focus of the practice. It is being and focusing on the present moment, and what we'll be ending up doing is focusing on our breath. Yeah. So quick show of hands. How many of you have experienced maybe some aspect of reaching In work, I've heard it be called deep work or like the zone or like the flow state before in really anything. Have any of you experienced that before? Sweet, awesome. Yeah, kind of the main takeaway, and if anything that I would want you to take away from this presentation is that mindfulness can help reach this state more consistently. And that's how I think that it can be applied and hopefully benefit you in really whatever you would like. Because why is mindfulness important? So just some quotes from the book. We all know that the mind can free us or trip us up. If your mind is filled with thoughts or emotions, you step out of flow. Whether you're playing football or piano concerto, if you start thinking about that fight you had with a friend earlier in the day, the minute your mind is elsewhere, the present moment is gone. The real key to high performance is the ability to direct and channel these strengths and skills full in the present moment, and that starts with your mind. So the takeaway here is being in that present moment is key to achieving the state of performance we desire. So to quickly recap, because I know that was a lot, but first, essentially, is mindfulness is defined as practicing being in the present moment. And second is being in the present moment is key to achieving or getting to that state of performance that we desire. Honestly, that's kind of everything that I wanted to talk about. I know that was super quick, and I do want to get to practice, or to try the practice, but I would love to pause there and ask if there are any questions or thoughts. Yeah.
Do you reach that state? Like, because you have been practicing. I'm not an avid practicer. I do practice on and off. Just asking you.
Yeah, I would say, like, I've definitely noticed in terms of before doing mindfulness and after starting it, it's also not like it's like a switch on mode where I can suddenly like consciously hop in and out. But I think the kind of like, it's almost like benefits of starting it is, again, with practicing mindfulness and being in the present moment, it's almost like a habit where it's like my mind subconsciously kind of, I've noticed that it's easier to fall into a focused mode or be aware of like, oh, this is what I'm feeling right now. This is how I am. And I know that for me to be able to do focused work, there are certain conditions or situations in terms of physically, but also in my mind that I do that good work in. For example, it's like, I know for a fact that like, if I'm kind of stressed or tired, it's very hard for me to enter into that like flow state or just like deep work state. So I think before mindfulness, I wasn't aware of my own personal kind of like internal state, but after it, because it's practicing being in the present, there's like kind of times where I'll notice like, oh no, I'm feeling tired. Like, oh no, I'm feeling hungry. So then I know like in that moment I can decide, oh, okay, is this something that I want to kind of address, or is it something that I can acknowledge and continue working on? So it's not like something that I'm unaware about that's like pulling me out of the state, if that makes sense. Yeah. Hopefully, does that answer?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Sweet. Yeah. Any other questions or?
Another question.
Yeah, for sure.
How long do you meditate?
I think like during the day when I'm at work, it'll be just like 30 seconds. Like it'll be like 10 seconds. Like I'll just sit down, close my eyes and just like recenter if I need to. So it can be really quick. But there are some nights, because I'm also aware that I personally really enjoy it. So like before, like once I get home, sometimes like the longest that I've done, and it's like, it sounds really intense, but it's also really interesting. I've spent like an hour, and one of the mindfulness kind of techniques is you just sit and stare at a wall. And you just like see what you're like, you kind of like are in the present moment and think about and notice what your mind is thinking about or trying to grasp onto. But that's probably the longest that I've done it, and I've only done it like a handful of times. I think most of the time it'll be like 10 minutes at home before I go to sleep or something. It just helps me chill out. Yeah, cool. All right, with that, we'll get into practice. So yeah, this should only take like 5 minutes. Honestly, if you want to, I'm getting seated because it's like a get in whatever position you feel most comfortable in. For me, I like to sit cross-legged, so I'm going to take off my shoes. But yeah, I will also set a timer. Oh, okay. No, I don't want an hour. That'd be a little bit too long. Okay, so I will ask everybody, basically this timer, I'll start it once we kind of start there's a period of time where I won't be talking. So I'll start it then, and that's kind of like the amount of time we won't be talking for. But yes, I will start this in a bit. So if everybody just wants to get in a comfortable position and then close their eyes, and we'll start off with 3 deep breaths. So it will be in through your nose and out through your mouth, and I will count it as well. So we're going to be in for 4 and out for 6. So in and out In and out. In and out. And just kind of continue breathing through your nose, out through your mouth in that pattern. And if you notice kind of any, I guess, tension or stress in maybe your neck or shoulders, kind of notice it and let it relax. One of the things that I like to imagine is your belly being a balloon too, just really expanding out, forward and out, and even out through the back as well, letting your rib cage expand. And again, just going back to the mindfulness, like focusing on the present moment, I really want you to try directing your attention to your breath. So if you notice your thoughts kind of thinking about maybe an email or a meeting, like that's completely okay, but kind of how, like if you notice a cloud floating through the sky, just notice it and let the thought pass and come back to focusing on your breath. And I'll start the timer now. We'll just continue this for a minute, just over a minute. And again, if you notice your mind kind of drifting onto some other thoughts, notice it and let it pass. Come back to your breath. That is the minute and a half, so we'll just slowly open our eyes whenever you're ready. Yeah, awesome. I also like to end it too with like 3 deep breaths, kind of how we started, just kind of like to reset. But to answer kind of your question, like that's how I started practicing. I think that's also how it's outlined in the book, to just try to start. Or actually, it might have been a video that I learned that. But anyways, for me, like when I'm at work, for example, like if I just need to kind of reset, those 3 deep breaths are like my thing that I do. That's why I said it takes like 10 seconds, because it's like my check-in. So like this example of like us doing it for a minute and a half, like if that's how long you have, or like that's how long I started with, is like super short amounts of time, but then like gradually just kind of increasing that amount of time. Because again, going back to the mindfulness is focusing on the present moment. That's kind of why I kept saying, kind of focus on your breath again. Because I'm not sure if you noticed, like, or actually I'll ask, like, did you notice your mind kind of drifting or like thinking about other things while we were doing it?
I had to come
Yeah, yeah, honestly, exactly. So it's like that ability of like your mind is just it, because that's just what your mind does, right? Like it'll just go off and think about what's next, what's next, what's next. And with mindfulness, trying to focus again on the present moment, one thing, that's what we're practicing. It's like you're sitting still, but you're focusing on the breath as kind of the conduit, and that's what this whole practice is about. So starting off super easy with a minute and a half. I don't know. I remember when I first started, it felt so long. I don't know if that was your experience too, but like that's why we start off with super short. And then if you want to increase it to like 5-10 minutes, then I think as a daily practice. I think from what I've read, it's like, I think 4 to 6 weeks, that's when you see clinical like results of like improvement.